Nick, I really appreciate you making time to have this conversation today. This is a while in coming for us to get together and chat. So thank you for being here.
Anytime.
Uh, November 30th, 2022, the world faced what I can best describe as a seismic shift. And I don't think everybody realized contextually how important that date was and will be considered to be when we're looking back from the future. Yeah. Tell us what your thoughts were that day. Well, first of all, tell us what happened that day and then tell me your thoughts.
ChatGPT was launched publicly.
Right?
So everyone, their cats, got access to this revolutionary AI, artificial intelligence, for one of the first times in the world where it wasn't the stuff of science fiction. It wasn't the stuff of research labs. It was in everyone's hands, phones, computers that they could interact with.
And the day that happened, people had differing viewpoints of the importance of that day. And I'm curious, you had early access to ChatGPT, so that day wasn't as monumental to you because you had time to play with it before. What was your experience of the first time that you got a chance to interact with AI? And what was the meaningfulness from your perspective of November 30, 2022?
I'll first kind of start with a mental model of how we think about AI progression, but you can extrapolate this to how we think about just technology and how it permeates into your life through this thing called Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3. And so in Horizon 1, you are exposed to, but haven't yet built a foundational understanding and trust within the system. And the analogy that we use here is there was a time where everybody in their car and their driver's side had paper maps. And wherever you go, if you were trying to find a direction somewhere, you would use paper maps. And then Google Maps came out. And there was a time where both things existed at the same time, but you were still using paper maps.
Mm-hmm.
Now you do not go anywhere or use any directions apart from Google Maps. You will never travel to a new country, and the first thing that you do at the airport is, please go show me a paper map. Nobody does that.
Nobody does that, yeah.
And so the threshold of crossing from that Horizon 1 to Horizon 2 is when the person has built innate trust that the thing isn't going to hallucinate, the Google Maps isn't going to tell you to drive into a lake, things like that. And that's where most people are with ChatGPT. And so for me, there were a lot of instances where I would ask the AI something, and at those kind of times you could change different settings within the AI. So things like top K or temperature, where the AI could be more or less creative. And so in those kind of interactions, the AI would hallucinate very often. And in those times, like, it checks that box in your head. See, the AI is not going to take over. It can never do what I do. And then there would be times where I would ask it the question and it would do a lot better than I would. And this was ChatGPT 2 and 3 and 3.5. And now we're at the place where for most things, when you ask it questions, it more often than not answers in a way that is materially better than anything that you could come up with on first blush. And so having that realization for me crossed me from 1 to 2 to start looking at the actual applications of it, because I built that foundational trust and understanding in that system. So that was it for me. And then just for everyone, the acceleration of it. So that reference point that we talked to a lot, where ChatGPT hit 100 million users in 64 days. And in reference, it took Facebook 4.5 years to get the same number of users. So never seen that kind of inflection point happen from a technology perspective until now.
That's explosive growth. I mean, I think Spotify was the next closest in terms of its growth, and it took at least a year or longer for them to actually get closer to that kind of numbers and subscribers. So, wide scale adoption. I think what's fascinating about AI is that there's wide scale adoption, but it feels like the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. I forget who first said that, but so people are aware of it. They're aware of AI. They maybe have a ChatGPT account. Maybe they've used, Anthropic's Claude or one of the other ones, Perplexity, but they may be using it for very different things. So I think the adoption curve of having an account and, I've played with it, That's one person. Well, I guess we start at I don't think about it. I don't have an account. To I have an account. I've played with it a few times. To I have an account and I keep trying to throw new things at it. To I have an account and I'm using it quite frequently at home and with work to support me. To I have an account, I subscribe to it, and it's a pivotal co-pilot, even though one of them is called that, but it's a pivotal co-pilot to me in my day-to-day role in business. And then as an overall human being, I can't imagine operating without it. To your level, which is, far beyond that, of multiple AIs for multiple use cases, and looking at industries and companies and saying, how is your industry or your company going to be disintermediated by AI? Mm-hmm. And how do we get the AI into your company as fast as possible so that you're the one doing the disruption, as opposed to you being kind of the victim in your industry of the disruption? Because, I think fundamentally, it's not will AI potentially disintermediate and disrupt my industry? It's when will it do so? Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think you touched on two really important things. So the first one about the tool itself. So that kind of progression on usage and people's ability to extract the highest level of potential output out of this thing. And the way to think about this is this kind of egalitarian distribution of this commodity. So ChatGPT is this tool. And it's not like you have a different ChatGPT than I do.
Right.
For most people, if you're on the free, you're all on the same free plan. Just like you have an iPhone and I have an iPhone. Mm-hmm. Just like Jeff Bezos has an iPhone.
Right.
But how you give this iPhone to, let's say, if I have like an 8-year-old, mm-hmm. and I give this phone to my 8-year-old and then watch how he uses it versus how Jeff Bezos uses it, the technology is the same. The hardware is the same.
Right.
But the outputs that each individual gets is completely different. Right. Why is that? And so that kind of ladder and that learning curve is what makes that difference. AI transformation requires skills transformation. You need to fundamentally change how you think and how you use these kind of things. I think one thing that has held people back is, we can call it bias in a way, but I see it still where AI is a very polarizing topic. At the very, very beginnings of ChatGPT coming out, there were so many examples of AI is not that smart. And there were countless examples of I can do this, AI can't do this, therefore I will discount it. And so they will never continue to learn to see maybe what are the inefficiencies or deficiencies that I have where I didn't maybe prompt it right, or I didn't do this workflow right. What part was I missing? And so for the people who did that, they discounted models for when it came out. 4.5, 4.0, 01, 03. And at what point will they wake up and the delta isn't so significant that they can no longer catch up? Where if you're at, let's say we're at 05, that model is so advanced. And if you haven't built the foundational muscles of understanding how to talk to these AIs, are you going to be too far behind? And that's also something that I worry about in terms of just the education spectrum that we can talk about afterwards. But as schools telling kids not to use AI, but then as a company, you would be looking for people who have robust understanding in AI. And so as an educator, you're telling someone not to use something, but these companies who your kids will rely on for their livelihood are asking for this. Those are some fundamental differences there. The other, just on the topic of how companies are using it, and when we go into those kind of things, that common axiom that people say that you're going to get replaced, not by AI, but by someone that uses AI. We hear that all the time. But it goes further into the companies that don't use AI will get replaced by the companies that do. And what we also see now with Stargate, a $500 billion AI infrastructure project, is that the nations that don't use AI will be replaced by the nations that do. And so there's a lot more macro dynamics at play, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting time.
I feel like the analogy that keeps sticking with me is, there was an abacus, and then there was a calculator, and then somebody introduced Lotus 1, 2, 3, and then Excel. And, I'm comfortable using a calculator and this piece of paper, and it works fine. And then somebody brings out Excel and it's like, well, yeah, that does all of that, but a lot better than what your experience has been so far. And the adoption curve took a while before people were comfortable moving into a full spreadsheet environment. We wouldn't even think of that today, right? Like, and AI is so the delta between calculator to spreadsheet, the delta between not having AI to having AI is so much more massive in terms of what it's capable of, that I agree with you that I think, early adoption, which is really just playing with it, like get in there and have fun with it and see what it's capable of. And from a tools perspective, as you say, for kids in schools today, like when ChatGPT first came out, I played with it for a couple of weeks, and then I came back to the team and I showed a demo of what I could see it doing for our business. And I said to the team, like, if you can figure out how to use this AI to do a portion of your job, whether it's doing a draft for you, or it's editing something for you, or it's a brainstorming partner, if you can get it to do it for you, then then you doing that thing is not the most valuable use of your time anymore. And so I don't think the AI should replace you. I think that you should use the AI to bolster the job that you do, and to give yourself more time and energy to do something that the AI couldn't do, which is, for instance, be in front of customers, to have white space to be creative and to think. And so that's the message that we put across Virtus. And then my daughter, who had been hearing me say these things and watched me help set up a friend's phone with ChatGPT, unbeknownst to me, was watching me do it, and then set up her own ChatGPT on her iPhone. And I didn't know she'd done this. And then weeks later comes back and my wife says to me, you got to go ask her what she did with her assignment for poetry. So I went in and I asked her, and she's like, yeah, we had this poetry assignment, and so I used ChatGPT to help me with it. And I'm like, well, you don't have a ChatGPT account. She's like, yeah, I do. She's like, you were showing Uncle Richard when at lunch, at brunch. And as soon as you finished, I went and I did the same steps, and I loaded it onto my phone. And then I loaded it onto my school laptop, and I used it to help me. And I'm like, okay, well, I think you need to teach your teacher, or tell your teacher that you're doing this. And so I started thinking, well, now it's really about me teaching my daughter responsible use of an AI, particularly in an educational environment, so that she is conversant in it and comfortable with it and using it in an appropriate way. And then I went and talked to the head of school of her school and said, hey, like, my daughter's doing this. Where are you at? And the head of school is like, teachers are using it to do lesson planning, and yet we're not sure what to tell the kids to do with it yet. And then later last year, the school announced a full educational AI rollout. And so now the entire school has an educational AI built into their laptops that they now use to help to support their schooling. So instead of running away from it or banning it or whatever else, the school's like, we're going to lean in. And because if we don't lean in, the kids are going to go use it anyway. They're just not going to tell us about it. And then it's hard for us to help support responsible usage patterns. Instead, we're going to give them an AI, which we can help support their responsible usage of. And we can have a standard across that protects privacy, that has security protections, and that helps to support the learning plans that we have for the kids. So it's kind of wild to see that it's literally happening anyway. And I feel like not doing something about it or imagining it's not going to affect you is like going to the beach and like holding your hands out against the water in the hopes of stopping the tide from coming in.
I think that experience is really interesting, because I would bet that if you asked other schools, the interesting thing is there is no one set AI governance policy that is adopted globally, let alone nationally, let alone provincially. And so it's this kind of weird place where we are now being exposed to it is the singular most intelligent thing that humanity has ever invented, full stop. And yet how we regulate, how we govern, how we policy this entity has not been agreed upon, not just at a government level, but like as parents. So you have your way of how your daughter should use AI that might differ from how another parent. It's pretty interesting. And it's the same thing that goes for organizations, because we've been in countless organizations where the strategy is one of the first pieces. And to understand, yes, the company's workflow, what they would use the AI for, identifying your current resource choke points, what do you wish that you were able to give your clients, but you can't because you don't have enough money or you don't have enough people that would materially augment your business? Yes, that is always first and foremost, understanding the data and the technology. But at the end, the ethics of it, how this gets rolled out, what is the right policies around use case? When should you and when shouldn't you? Internally at our company, human in the loop is mandatory. Nothing from our company ever goes out without human review ever. We are augmented with AI for most of what we do, but nothing that sees a client is ever just AI and then it goes out. I don't think there's a non-zero possibility. It's a very material possibility that we get to that point where an AI is sophisticated enough that it understands through enough experience of dealing with your business and your workflows that it understands fully what you want to do and it gets it right 100 out of 100 times. But in today's world, no, nothing goes out without us to review. So I just think that's really interesting. From school to school, business to business, government to government, it's all different.
You raise a really interesting point relative to privacy, because I think the reality is that the more I'm willing to tell the AI, which requires me giving information to it, the more apt it is to be able to act on its own or provide me better guidance and information. But the trade-off, right? That's the trade-off. The trade-off is, well, I need to feed it as much as I can because then it'll get smarter at helping me. But now I've got this privacy trade-off. There's a security issue that people will bring up outside of privacy, which is like, well, is what I'm sharing with it now going outside of my company? Is that helping to build large language models? Is, where's our proprietary language, knowledge, processes, systems relative to it getting into the hands of our competitors? And I think that there's always going to be that trade-off of, unless we're building our own AI internally that is in a firewall and isn't external, that the trade-off is I'm giving up some of my privacy, but man, the benefit that I'm getting on the other side of it is so big because this model has been fed so much information that's helpful to me that I'm getting a really good help to support my day-to-day workflow.
I think the really interesting question here is asking yourself if you trust Google or Facebook or Instagram
Right.
or TikTok, because people freely post the most intimate parts of their lives.
Right.
The pictures of their kids, of their partners.
Right.
Things that they shouldn't be posting. So you've already done it. And to just paint this, it's like there's a couple of anecdotes of instances where some engineer posted some source code and then that went into the training thing and they get fired. Do those things happen? Yes, they happen. Are there ways to design your systems? A common thing that we get brought in to do is how do we design maybe a localized system that is secure, that doesn't go to the cloud, things like that. We absolutely can do that. But I think philosophically, it's ironic to bring up these kind of concerns. The newest update to Zoom's TNCs allow them to, on any call, all the audio will be taken for training their AI. And you all clicked agree because all the people that use Zoom, I know you definitely did not open those T's and C's and you read through everything.
That's my favorite thing to do, Nick. Whenever I download a new software package or an update, I read all the terms and conditions.
So I mean, Zoom did it, Facebook did it, everyone's doing it. So yeah, I think your point of the trade-off between I think privacy is also just a relic of a time that's gone by. And how much more material productivity or material gain can you gain from the AI versus the trade-off of giving it the context of who you are in your life and the things that you may think are private.
Yeah. So if a listener is listening to all of this and they're hearing this sort of the scope of where things are at in the AI world right now, and they haven't actually used an AI yet of any description, what's the baby step? Where do you start?
I would be hard pressed to imagine anyone that hasn't been exposed to AI. V0, V1 AI is an algorithm. An artificial intelligence is anything that thinks without you giving it instructions. So a TikTok algorithm is an AI. It will artificially, intelligently give you and feed you what it thinks that you will want to watch next. So if you've seen any of those, you already have been exposed to AI. Now, when we talk about this context, where do you kind of start with ChatGPT or any of these generative AI things? Just play with it. I think most people start with asking the very basic questions of like, how many planets are there in the solar system, or draw me a picture of imagine a cat on the moon with an electric guitar kind of thing. Create a picture of that for me. So people will do that, and this harkens back to that Horizon 1 to Horizon 2, where you ask it some of these dumb questions, and then it answered it, and it did it right. And I'll ask it another one, and it did it right. And you'll start asking it more and more sophisticated questions, and you'll probably reach a ceiling where you may not know how to. You keep asking it the same question or the answer that you want to get, and it's not doing it for you. And so when you reach those kind of ceilings, this is where you may want to start looking into things like prompt engineering. How do you ask the better questions? One of the most basic foundational learning blocks for anyone starting with AI is that the way that you talked to AI, that word itself, talk to AI, is fundamentally different than how you currently work. Because what people were mostly used to with things like Google is keyword. You would type in something quick, cheap flights to Hawaii. You would not give it context. Hey, I'm about to go on a vacation with my family of 4. 2 of my kids are gluten-free, and my wife cannot sit on an aisle seat. And so we are going to London for 9 days, and we just love this. No one is going to type that into Google.
Right.
But that is how you converse with an AI, and that's how you will get the best outputs of an AI. So moving from keyword-based to conversation-based is a different muscle that people need to learn. So instead of typing a quick 10-second query into Google and then sifting through those responses, going through all the SEO puffy crap, and then trying to find the little nuggets that you want and then piecing them together, you should spend 5 minutes and craft the perfect prompt, give the context to the AI, and engage in those kind of conversations. So as one of the first steps, that's probably what I would do.
So when I hear you talk about prompt engineering, what I hear is literally sitting down and thinking, in your example, like I would Google fly to London or a trip to London. Whereas if I was talking to a travel agent, I would say, well, I've got a family of 4, 2 of my kids are gluten-free. My wife likes aisle seats. Like, we want to go to London in the spring. We don't like museums, but we really like, going to activities. One of my kids gets, car sick, so I don't want to spend too much time in cars. Really the things that you would converse with another human being about who is trying to help you to plan your perfect London trip, that you almost got to think of what I'm hearing from you is almost got to think of like the AI that way, which is like prompt engineering is really just like write a great thing to like write a great message to the AI. So the AI is like, oh, okay, I really understand what you're looking for. And I will go get you those things that fit what you just said. Mm-hmm. And I think interestingly, even if it doesn't get it perfect on the first try, you are in conversation with it. So you can say to it, oh, I forgot to tell you that I don't want to do night flights. And you brought me back these really good deals, but they're red eyes. And I don't want to fly a red eye. And then the AI will, okay, cool. I'll go back and I'll bring you flights that are during the day, right? Like, oh, I forgot to tell you I want to go for a week. That's kind of important because you just brought me back an itinerary that was 2 weeks long and I don't have that kind of time to go to London with my family. So I love that you're suggesting to people like, hey, use something innocuous, like plan a trip on it. Like just literally anything. I mean, I had a time when I was thinking about trying to bake something. And then I'm like, man, I don't really have any recipes that I like right now, but I knew what I wanted to make. And so I said, well, I have these ingredients in my cupboard and I'd like to make this. It was muffins. So I want to make a very specific type of muffin. And I'm like, I have these ingredients. I think these are all the things I need to make the muffins. Can you give me the quantities in baking measurements so that I can make these? And it, boom, spits out a recipe. I'm like, well, I could have gone onto Google and searched out recipes for a while, trying to find this muffin, not knowing if it was going to be good or not. And what my experience has been of ChatGPT and doing something innocuous and as simple as doing baking a muffin was what came back was like bang on. And when I compared it to other recipes online, it was exactly the right type of thing. Mm-hmm. And if I gave it even further instructions, which was, I really like recipes that come from Betty Crocker, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Then it would come back and say to me, oh, well, here's a recipe that is very close or exactly like what Betty Crocker would create for this thing. Even if a Betty Crocker had never written a recipe like that, it would have the full knowledge and the full catalog of every Betty Crocker recipe ever and would provide great feedback. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I know there are probably people listening who are listening because they're like, I haven't played with this tool yet, or I don't even know what to do with it. I wonder if you take that up to the company stage now. So let's talk about organizations that would reach out to you at Farpoint and say like, hey, we know we need to be on an AI journey. We don't know where to start that journey. Like where should they get started? Like what is, and I mean it like practically, but also like mindset wise, what mindset should they be in relative to AI as a company today?
I think where you want to position yourself is this mantra of don't be scared, be prepared. And so, like your example of going to an ocean and holding your hands out to try to hold back the tide, AI is coming. It's in every single, whether or not you want it in your company does not operate without software.
Right.
Every software company has AI on their roadmap, whether it's Salesforce, whether it's Canva, it doesn't matter what you use. AI will be a feature in every product that you use. Okay, so AI is going to come into your organization. How do you get the best out of it? Most companies, exactly like you said, don't know where to start. They just know that they need AI. And that's a great place to start. So to oversimplify it, we would start at explore, pilot, production. Within explore, we need to figure out where AI is going to fit in your business and who is going to be the people that are going to be integrating and deploying these things, maintaining these things, identifying your AI champions in your business. When we go into businesses, we operate on this notion that we are the experts in AI, but you are the experts in your organization. You will always know your business better than we do. We just know AI. So we work collaboratively to understand your business so that we can integrate the AI and when it would be beneficial to augment those workflows. So that's what we do at the exploration phase, which is to identify and articulate the strategy. What are the current choke points or the things that are holding you back in your business today that if you had a magic wand, you could wave those things to be gone? Tell us what those things are. Then we do that in-depth analysis that not just goes through, are you ready technically? Is your data ready? There are a company that has no data to train an AI model on. So I can't help you. If you still have Post-it notes and Susan is sending you your calendar invites on like a piece of paper that she drops off on your desk, and one day that slips and falls through the literal floor cracks, I can't help you. Right? So we can't develop custom AI in those kind of scenarios. But through that exploration, we do what's called an impact assessment to understand the core areas that AI can intervene. Usually in that exercise, we identify 5, 10, in some cases 50 different areas and opportunities of AI. And then we work together to pick what are some of the projects that you want to pilot. And in the pilot is where we demonstrate the feasibility, the crossing over from Horizon 1 to Horizon 2. You actually see an instance of the AI being used, and we try to generate outputs that meet 80, 85, 90, 95% thresholds of what current human operators are doing at the business. Meaning that if you have a copywriter that gets the copy right in this specific tone and you want AI to mimic it, the AI should be able to replicate that output 85, 90, 95% of the time. And at that point, it's ready because you can trust the AI isn't going to hallucinate. It gives you an output that you can actually use to recoup either time gains or capital gains. And then we think about what's necessary to move into production. What systems does it need to integrate to in your current operating tech stack? What kind of considerations do we need to take from a safety perspective and ethics perspective, especially if it's being exposed to an end user? So there's that famous example of, I think it was Chevy, that rolled out too soon without proper testing a chatbot, and someone prompt injected it, a fancy way of saying jailbreak, that AI to sell him legally a car for $1. And I think Chevy had to sell him a car for $1 because the AI created a binding contract. So you don't want to do those things, right? And so those are structurally how we would think about working with organizations and how they would go from exploration to production.
What I think is helpful about that is that, I've been chatting with organizations and they ask us, even though we're there to develop leaders in the organization, the leaders are asking us, like, where should we be going with AI? And I think one of the roadblocks for people is they're like, well, until we can figure out where to go with AI, we can't get started and we can't even ask for help because we're not sure what help we're asking for. And what I hear you saying is that's actually not the right question. The question is find somebody you can trust that can come in and help do a needs assessment of your business. So you don't have to be an expert in what AIs can do. You just have to be an expert in your business and then get somebody who, like you, who's an expert in AI to come in and say, oh, tell me all about the pain points in your business. Tell me about the high volume low cost activities or high volume, high cost activities that we can potentially use an AI to do. And then let's demo it. Let's just play with it. See, we'll get an AI to try it out and see if it does it. And if it gets it 85 to 95% right, then you can have a human who will go, well, that was really fast. What would have taken me an hour just happened in seconds. And it's pretty close. So I have to do spend 5 minutes to make it 100%. So I got a pretty good ROI on my time and energy. And so it feels like that is an iterative cycle, like it's emergent in that you could get started and then the act of actually doing the work kind of teaches you where else you could use an AI inside the organization. And think about it as like little mini experiments in your company that you're just trying out that are really low. They're low cost and they're low potential negative impact because you're just doing them internally and they're not client facing yet. And so you're doing them from an operational perspective. And before you ever get close to this being wide scale adoption internally or going client facing, you've had plenty of time internally to practice it. Mm-hmm. And I think that if the company isn't doing that right now, their competitors are. They don't know they are because they're like, oh, well, there's nothing, they haven't announced it. There's no public facing AI, but they're doing the work internally and we don't know. Mm-hmm. And so, when the big announcement comes out and it's client facing, all of a sudden it's like, how are we going to catch up? Because they've had this iterative cycle of testing going on in their organization for 6 months before they were compelled and felt ready to introduce it client facing. We're now 6 months or more behind. The problem is that same company isn't going to stay still for the next 6 months. So while we're trying to catch up, that company's already working on the next iteration of whatever it is that they're going to launch. And so I agree with you in that the time to start is kind of like, when's the best time to plant an oak tree? It's like 100 years ago or right now, because, right. And so with AI, it feels like we're at that moment, like the time to start is just do something now. Apathy or sitting back and waiting until everybody else figures it out and then jumping in. The technology and the usefulness of it is moving so fast that, and maybe, I don't know, this is my perspective and you might have a different perspective. I don't think you can wait.
No, I agree. I definitely don't think you can wait. We are seeing a bit more uptick now. I think when we started Farpoint, our initial clients were really the early adopters, the real innovators kind of. I don't yet know the potential of it, but I'm inclined to explore.
Okay.
And that isn't the same for most organizations. And so I think there was a lot of grace extended to businesses and leaders during 2022 because at that point, everyone started at the exact same spot.
Yeah.
And you had 2023 to explore and you had 2024 to kind of explore. But in 2025, you've had 2 years to play around with these tools to understand them at varying levels of fidelity. But what is your AI strategy now? You've had 2 years to do this. You should know. And now there's kind of it's not coming to Jesus moment, maybe coming to AI moment where a lot of these okay, I need to figure this stuff out now because some of these companies who have used 2022, 23 to explore, they're now in the piloting phase and they're starting to see real business use case, real business value being accrued. And you're right, that is I should have planted it 100 days ago or 100 years ago, but okay, I need to plant this now. We're seeing a bit more uptick from there. That being said, so there's a bit of that urgency that people should take and organizations should take. That being said, though, current AI adoption across Canada is still less than 10%. It's about 5-6%. Enterprises across all industries. right? We are among one of the lowest in the G7 in terms of AI adoption. Yeah, it's very low. And I think you might have to fact check me on this one, but just ChatGPT adoption, I still think is 5% of internet users. Like less than 15% of all internet users use ChatGPT. And it's funny because, I go around and we do these keynotes where we do these workshops with people. And one of the ways that we usually start sessions is by asking all the people in the room how many people have used ChatGPT or heard of ChatGPT. And everybody's hands will go up. And then you ask how many people use ChatGPT every day. And it's maybe 30% of the room. And then you ask how many people in the room have a paid version of ChatGPT they use more than once a day. And it's maybe 3, 5, 10 people in a room. And it's so small. And it's comical to me because we've invented the smartest thing that we've ever invented for the same amount as your Netflix subscription. And yet you have one, not the other. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to help you. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't drink.
That's actually a really good example to use, because you're right. Like the ChatGPT subscription and a Netflix subscription are pretty much the same price. And one of them, obviously, you're just consuming content, and the other is a complete game changer in terms of what's possible, both personally and for your business. So, I think the call to action is there for leaders today. And I think if you're listening and you're a leader, part one is to say, well, how can I use it in my day-to-day workflow? That was part one. Part two is, what conversation am I having with the people that report up to me, to figure out some little tiny experiments that they can do in their own workflows where they use AI on a daily basis. And, what I've said to the team at Vertus is, before you do a task, to step back and say, is there a way I could use an AI to help to support this task? And if the answer is maybe, just give it a shot and see what comes back. Because I can genuinely say that particularly with the current version of ChatGPT, I am surprised at how good the output is. And the number of times where I've gone and worked on something and then realized I could have used ChatGPT, and then I realized how much time it took me to do whatever the thing was. And I could have used ChatGPT. I'm like, oh, why did I just do all that? That was not the best use of my time and energy. And so, I would implore people to look at their calendar. Like right now, look at your calendar, look at the meetings that you have, look at are you still taking notes in meetings? Zoom has an AI built into it. You can use things like Fathom.video, Otter.ai, Firefly. They all integrate with Zoom and Teams and Google Meet to take notes, to keep track of action items, to summarize meetings, to have searchable transcripts. Like, it almost doesn't make sense to go into a meeting and not have the AI turned on. If you want to just have a conversation with it, the new version on the iPhone and on Android, you can literally just push the voice button and talk to it like it's a human being sitting next to you, and get it to help you just in a back and forth conversation. You can interrupt it in the middle of its thought process, and it'll stop and listen to you like you would do with a person you were brainstorming with. Mm-hmm. So I would implore listeners who haven't had a chance to play with it yet to just literally go into ChatGPT right now and just go try it out. Just I don't know, think of something you got to work on in your day-to-day life and just see if this thing can actually do it for you. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, particularly if it's been a while since you last used ChatGPT, how incredible the progress has been in its capabilities since even 6 months ago.
I think 2 quick points on that one is, a lot of the stuff that we talked about was level 1, level 1.5.
Yeah.
Getting into that level 2 is understanding that these AIs now, ChatGPT being one of them, or Bard, or Claude, they're multimodal. What that means is, before, if you use ChatGPT in 2022, 23, it was text to text. You put text in, you got text back. Now you can talk to it and get text back, or you could talk to it and it can talk back to you, audio to audio, or you can text it something and ask it to generate a picture for you. So now it's image. And there's a lot of these modalities. The example that you used before about baking muffins, where you told it what ingredients that you had and ask it to give you a recipe, you can just go scan your fridge with the camera on your phone And then the AI will recognize what those things are and do the same output for you. Or it can just speak it to you. And we're not far from a world, in fact, we're pretty much here right now, where whether it's through something like a Meta glasses with an earpiece or something like that, and you're watching yourself cook, the AI is watching your progress. It can guide you step by step. Oh, you should add a little more salt, or you might want to cut that more finely, or the recipe calls for this. I noticed you only put this amount. You need half a teaspoon more. We're not far from that world. And so you have these AI guided things. You have car problems. You have an audio input into the AI, so the AI can hear the no 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 whatever sound it is coming out of your car. Your augmented glasses can produce an exploded view of your engine and tell you what the thing that are wrong is. So it completely changes every facet of our lives. We may not know it yet, but when we get into that level 2, level 3, I would implore people to really start playing around with like the multimodalities of it. Watching my co-founder, CTO Ryan, he drives a Tesla and he just puts on autopilot. And so he'll just lean back and he'll have these very deep conversations with the AI on new groundbreaking research papers. Well, why is that the model designed this way? Or how did they get this kind of performance through this? And he's working through this with the AI while another AI in his car is driving him from one location to another location. It's the coolest thing. It's the coolest thing. Yeah.
Well, I love that you have segmented, you know, hey, level 1 is this, level 2 is this, level 3 is this. And the reality, as you said, is that whether we like it or not, AI is being integrated into our lives by the companies that we choose to purchase from, whether it's getting an iPhone, Android device, whether we use Microsoft 365, which is just pushing out Copilot to everybody now. Google has done the same thing with its coming Salesforce, HubSpot. Like, we're using all these tools. The AI is now embedded into everything we use. The question is, are we being mindful and are we being deliberate about looking for the places in our lives and in our business where we think AI can we can do little experiments and actually try out how an AI might be able to benefit something that we do every day that we had no idea an AI would be capable of helping us with. Nick, I really appreciate you making time to have this conversation. I know you are traveling around the world, speaking at the European Union, speaking to the Canadian government. You're literally in different continents all the time when I reach out to you out there speaking at a policy level. And we didn't get a chance to dive into that today and the work that you're doing at the governmental level so that governments can start to consider how advancements in AI and AI policy needs to be driven in a way that is supporting countries in making the right decisions on behalf of their citizens. So I appreciate you spending time to talk to us about the practicality of AI and what leaders need to be thinking about at the corporate level. I really appreciate your time and energy today.
You too. Thanks for having me.
How was that